All right, you guys, welcome to our special for tonight. I wanted to bring you guys the science and keys to communication and really just try to be able to serve our couples and get you some information that I think is going to be real useful. So, we'll be here just under an hour, but in that hour, I'm going to give you so much juice just to be able to help your relationship out as much as possible. So some of these pieces are taken out of our marriage communication master classes, our masterclass that we will now be having once a month. And so in that masterclass, I take you through assignments and breakdowns that you and your partner, or you, depending on what the dynamic is of your relationship, to get to a different level in communication and really change how your relationship is happening. So let's go over um, what we have today and just start breaking it down. So overall, the objective that we have is that we want to be able to realize how much you can, as a person or as an individual, have an impact on your relationship, how much you can grow and then create a difference in your relationship. And then understanding how much we have an influence is one part of it, but what if we knew the keys that actually would that it would take to transform our relationship and have a different kind of outcome? That'd be so amazing. And for all of you who are struggling in your relationship or having a difficult time right now, it's going to be right here, and before you know it, things will start changing, and you'll be able to experience something different. All right, so we need a definition first. That's how we're going to get it started. So the first piece here is the marriage communication mastery. If we talk about marriage communication mastery, what does that mean to me, so that you and I can be on the same page? For me, marriage communication mastery is your ability to share with your partner internal and external experiences that results in a unification of two, and then the growth of each individual. And so there's no stopping point to this. And I always tell people who come in to see me and meet with me, like, our work that we do together is more like the gym. We have to constantly work on just getting better, strengthening the things that we know, because at the end of the day, the struggle to maintain strength in certain areas is difficult if we're not practicing and really working at it. So that's our first definition. Then we also need to be able to look at purpose. And so, how would we define our purpose? And this is useful. This may have not been your purpose before we talk about it today, but I need this to be your purpose if we're going to move forward and if you're going to be successful in changing what's going on in your relationship now. So, your purpose is to be able to serve the people around you by growing yourself into a person of awareness and focus on growing what's on the inside, which will produce for others on the outside. And so, in a nutshell, what we're talking about here is that you're going to have to grow on the inside so that you can actually serve your partner. Now, serving your partner is not you um, helping them or pleasing them necessarily. That's probably a better word to use. It's not you pleasing them, it's you being able to serve them. And sometimes when we do service, it's not that somebody feels happy about it, but it's the most loving thing that we can give them in order for their life to have a long term good situation. Okay, so really important for us to be able to look at those two definitions and use those as a starting point. So the first concept that we're going to talk about is the power of your individual change. And so my favorite way of being able to discuss us as people, because it's easy for us to see, is um, the idea of growing plants, right? If or fruits or vegetables or whatever it is that, vegetation wise, you want to try to grow, the idea that you would spend time on perfecting the environment and the situations that would create goodness and fruit is the same kind of scenario that we would have to do with ourselves. A lot of times we just try to skip to getting the results. And when we skip to get the results, then we don't have the outcomes that we really would have if we spent the time on understanding. And there's tons of depth that we can take this to. But the picture is easy. The idea is easy if you think about I have to produce on the inside first so that I can have and give or lend to my partner more so more of the things that are needed in our relationship for us to grow. Okay, so um, initially probably an easy concept, but the truth is we struggle a lot of times. And I think if you're able to recognize your struggle or see some of the things that happen in your relationship, then it might be helpful for us for you to know how much you're accidentally influencing your relationship in ways that you don't really want to influence them. And so let's go over five that are really common in the scenarios that I work with. And so one is unresolved trauma. A lot of times that's what causes you to get hooked and react instead of having your relationship interests in mind. And so you're not focused on making goodness out of your relationship or having good things happen in your relationship. You're more focused on doing the battle, and it's not even a choice, it's just something that hooks you. Another situation that happens is blaming and insulting, which leads to defensiveness and forearms or fists in the air. And so a lot of times we go to blame, and maybe this is because we're hooked by something, but either way, the behavior is a common one where we're insulting or blaming or somehow making sure that our partner um, isn't top notch in our mind. And all it does whenever that happens is causes our partner to put their forearms up and make them not really want to be around us. And so when that starts happening, when they're in a fight or protection type defensive mode, we're not going to get the things that we need. But you can see that you could be having a certain kind of impact in your relationship if blaming and insulting is an avenue that you're taking. The third thing that's common in what I see is feeling something different on the inside than what you're able to communicate for whatever reason. So this causes confusion and leads to not seeing. And the way that happens is you're apprehensive maybe to say everything that's going on the inside, but your partner's only seeing what's happening on the outside. They're confused and interacting a certain way that is just making it worse for you because you're feeling like I'm not being seen. And so in those scenarios, our inability to be able to be congruent and or to know what's going on the inside versus what we're presenting causes a real hardship. The fourth thing is, and I think this is one of the more dangerous scenarios and probably brinking towards us not being able to stay in our relationship. And that's whenever you have a closed mind and a hard heart, because it doesn't really allow for you to see and feel the destruction that you're creating inside of your relationship. It doesn't allow for you to see and feel what's being experienced. And so as that's happening, your mind, just kind of like some of the other pieces, your mind's focused on doing the fight and less on what the relationship really needs. And it's a really dangerous place to be, and frankly it's really hard to come out of. But if that's you in that space, I think this is a good opportunity for you to know and see that that might be what's going on, and we're going to have to really um, break that down as much as possible. And the last thing is communication with harsh distance or punishment only results in unresolved conversations, hesitation, and manipulation. And so the way that we're doing communication, whenever it's harsh or whenever it feels distant, whenever you're trying to punish your partner, those communication methods start creating a different kind of interaction inside of your relationship. And so you see all these five topics that are pretty common in relationships. These are happening, and they're mistakes in communication that really demonstrate how much of a impact that we can have in a negative way on our relationship. It's super important for us to be able to acknowledge the impact we have. Why is this happening? And so from us being able to see all the things that happen, it helps us to develop the picture of the science behind the impact that we're having, right? And by the way, we'll get to this, but it can go either way. Okay, so it doesn't always have to end bad, especially if we're able to learn about what's going on. So, what's the science behind it? Well, the science behind it is that um, our communication is a behavior, right? So whether we're verbally communicating or non-verbally communicating, we're still communicating something, and that's always going to be a behavior concept. And so what we do know, and maybe it doesn't get pointed out all the time this way, but what we do know is that how we think creates how we feel, which creates our behavior. And so again, if we're able to replace the word behavior with communicate, we start understanding that, man, how I think creates how I feel, which lends to how I communicate. Right? To me, that's a huge advantage for us to realize that, because we can circle one area, and as we circle that area, then it starts helping us to understand where we would have to do some work. And some people will say to me as we start introducing this concept, but Thomas, like, I I don't even think about things. I just start feeling it, right? And we would say that that's more related to what your body knows, and the knowing is a mind thing again. Um, and a lot of times that has more to do with our hard experiences or our traumatic experiences in our life. We don't always call them trauma experiences. We just experienced hard things, or we experienced different situations that kind of trained us how to be in this scenario, or in these scenarios that we're experiencing whenever we're feeling some kind of way. So as that happens, then we still have that knowledge. Our body has that knowledge, and that creates the feeling. And then there's the behavior. So what does that actually look like, so that you can have an example? Well, let's say you grew up with a parent that was always yelling, and that was intimidating to you and kept you from or feeling safe enough to communicate and say everything that was going on for you, right? But then now you marry a partner who is communicating the same kind of way, and automatically, you're not necessarily thinking about it, but automatically it creates a shutdown for you. It makes you feel afraid and then creates a shutdown for you. So in that case, in that scenario, you might not consider it a bad thing. You might love your parents and think they did the best they can do. You don't see anything wrong with it. But then now you have the same experience that is creating some kind of hook for you. And so it's really important for us to know that no matter what we know or what we think creates how we feel, which ends in how we're going to communicate. Okay. And so communication has a beginning source of our definitions, beliefs, experiences about whatever event is happening. So whatever our partner is doing, whatever circumstance we're in, it's not always our partner that's doing something. Sometimes it's a hardship at work. Sometimes it is a car hardship or a financial hardship, or there's a lot of different kinds of scenarios that could be happening in life, but it generates some kind of feeling based on what you know or think. And out of that is where you get your communication. And it's useful for us to really understand the science behind what's going on with us. And so what we fill up our minds up with creates the communication. And so this is really important, because what we know is that as you start thinking different things or defining things a certain way, for instance, my partner isn't anything and they won't ever be anything, right? Like, if you feel like, or you start thinking like that and defining situations like that as a matter of fact, or this relationship's only going to get worse, right? That's a thought pattern that you're creating there. And that, as you start filling yourself up with that thought process, you start creating a new kind of feeling in your interaction, which results in a certain kind of communication. So that's one side of it. The other side of it is, no matter what experiences that we had, a lot of times those trauma pieces will be informing a lot of our process. So we're going to have to do some processing of those trauma experiences in order for us to change what that situation ends up being for us. Okay. This is huge science stuff that I think is useful for you to be able to have. And just this alone, to me, is it's a game changer. Okay. So now that we know this, is there a key that we can have that will help us to be able to change how we communicate? And I will say yes. And before we go into the key, let me just say, like, we can use this key in two different ways. And so one is we can use it in understanding how we operate, but we can also use it in understanding how we influence communication inside of our relationship. Okay. So let's look at the key and see if we can. Oh, it looks like my link to my key. Oh yeah, it's working for you guys. So you got it. All right. So um, what happens here is this helps us to understand why your communication is or is not working. If we start from the left side of my screen, we start with the idea that there is some kind of situation. And with that situation, what we need to know is that the the scenario that we are facing, we have an opportunity to put some kind of focus on that scenario, right? And so there's two opportunities. One is you can put a positive focus on the scenario, which says, like, I just believe that there's an opportunity here for us. I don't think it's good or bad. I just believe that there's an opportunity here for us. That would be a positive focus. The negative focus would say, man, this is all going bad. It only ever goes bad. Things have never gone well. It's not going to go good. It's just not a good scenario. And I just did a video about the gap versus gain book, and that'd be a useful video for you guys to tap into, because it helps us to understand how we create a different kind of frame around things. Let's go down the path that will give us a key to how things will not work for us. So if you start shaping or framing things with your negative focus, then inevitably you're going to create a doubt type scenario for yourself. And once that gets inside your body, you're going to start feeling anxiety and a sense of powerlessness. And in that sense of powerlessness, that's the mechanism that's initially built probably to keep you safe more than anything, because you're going to start doing fight or flight modes. And in those modes, your communication isn't as effective as it would be if you had gone down the framing of positive focus. Okay. And so just understand that this all started with the frame that you put around the situation at hand, and it crept into your mind, and then your heart, and then your body, in a way that made you think and made you feel like, man, these things, I'm not going to be able to handle it. Something needs to change besides me in order for it to go right. And that couldn't be more detrimental to you or your relationship than anything else. Okay. And so how do we switch it over? Well, this is what helps our communication to work. The more that we can frame things in a way that says, look, I have a lot of faith that these things will help bring on a situation of growth, of opportunity, of goodness. And the hard isn't a representation of what it will be. The hard is a representation of what it is, right? So as you start thinking that, then you start feeling a little bit more ambitious and excited about the opportunity that's at hand. And as that ambition grows, then you'll notice a sense of control or a sense of power that says, like, there's not really something in our situation that we can't tackle. And so you move on to go get that scenario done. Okay. What does this look like in our communication? And this is a really important thing, because this is our key here. So in our communication, because we can use it two ways. One is you can understand the reason that you're having a hard time with communicating, But then two, you can also understand, how can I be more effective at communication? Well, if you come in all excited and afraid and worried about all the outcomes of the relationship and what's going to happen and what has happened, you're going to communicate that way. And then you're going to influence or have some kind of way of making your partner worried and scared and afraid of what's going on as well. And so their anxiety builds up. And because their anxiety starts building up, they put their forearms up and are worried, and the communication starts breaking down. If you were to flip that and you said, like, hey, there's security in our relationship, there's confidence in our relationship, I'm not worried about this moment because this moment is just making us stronger. We're together. I'm not going anywhere. You're not going anywhere. We're going to do it together. Then everything changes, because it feels like there's security. It feels like there's connection. It feels like we're in control and that we're important to each other, right? And all that changes, it gives our relationship a totally different kind of feel and movement together. And now that communication is creating a different kind of experience for us, and it's what we're actually trying to get to here. Okay, so what is the first step to us being able to actually switch over how we're communicating, and how do we like unlock everything that we're trying to unlock? Well, it's making a commitment, really. So the first thing that you have to do if you're going to change your communication over is you need to be able to make a commitment, right? And that probably is the hardest thing to do, because you're a lot of times you're more aware of other things. But what does a commitment give you? Well, there's a couple of things that I think are really important, that a commitment gives us. The first thing is it gives us a place to really focus. Like, part of the issue a lot of times is that you like, okay, I'm married, but I don't have a place really to focus my energy, right? I'm usually running from whatever has been in my life. I'm running away from the last problem, and now I'm in this relationship, and now that's my problem, and I kind of want to run away from that, right? But a commitment to something really gives you a place to have a different kind of focus. The second thing it gives you is a foundation to build around besides your feelings. So kind of similar to what we were just talking about, a lot of the issues that you're having, they're more about past experiences and feelings that you're experiencing, and not really about you making your marriage better. And so your marriage could feel that. And that's what makes the hardship. And then finally, it gives you a place to really replace the battle. And so it will still be a battle for you to be able to do and fulfill your commitment. But now that becomes a battle, instead of you having to battle your partner, right? You don't have to worry about what they're doing now. Now you just get to worry about, how am I going to do this commitment to getting better at using my keys to communication, and my understanding of how communication works. How am I going to get better at that? Can I do that fight? And so as you go to do that fight, everything changes, and it starts with commitment. What's going to stop you from committing? Well, there's a couple of things that I know will stop you from committing, and they're worth us saying so that you can be really intentional about the opportunity that you're going to have here. So one is, you believe that it's your partner. Well, I mean, that's a pretty common one. A lot of times people think like, it's not me. I've done all I could do. It's a common thing. Like, it's them. And what I will say to you is that if it's your partner, it doesn't matter. You still have an opportunity to grow and to become better at doing relationships. Because even if this one doesn't work, you got to be able to get on to the next one, right? And so if you keep saying, and I've watched it happen too many times, where people say like, yeah, I didn't make that one work. I didn't make that one work. I didn't make that one work. Well, you keep being the only person in common between all those relationships. So it's not a savvy move for you to believe that it's your partner, and that lets you off the hook from making a commitment to the communication that you're doing in your relationship. Another thing is that's common is that it doesn't work, and that's uh, how should I say it? Because I'll just say it straight out. Like I think that that's just kind of a cop out for us to not do the things that are difficult, right? Because it doesn't work really doesn't exist. We're not talking about us changing our partner. We're not talking about getting compliance from our partner. We're not talking about that our partner is going to be what we want them to be now. Like that's not what we're talking about. So it not working would only mean one thing. It would mean that you're not willing to do the things that level you up in life and give you a chance to be better at your relationship. So it's kind of impossible for it not to work, and we really need to visit that concept if that's your belief that keeps you from making a commitment. The other thing is it gets scary for a lot of us, right? So your fight or flight mode starts kicking in, and it doesn't feel safe for you to commit to something without having the security that it's going to bring you and your partner together, or that security that means that your partner will actually do changes, right? And so that's a hard scenario for us to be able to battle through. But it's that staring at that thing that actually creates the issues that are stopping us from getting to a better place in our relationship. Another reason is you haven't really visualized the relationship you actually want to be a part of. And so because you can't see it, it's hard for you to commit to something that you can't see. And that makes total sense. And so it'd be useful for you to, and we actually develop this in our full master classes, more of a visualization of what it would actually look like. A common one, and I think for all of us is probably the case, is it's too hard. I've already been doing relationships this way for a long time, and for me to make a commitment to something in mastery and communication, that would be a huge task for me to undertake. Okay, and then finally, someone else will win, and so we get afraid that we're going to lose the battle, right? And so you might lose up front or feel like, like I'm losing up front, but the long term growth and opportunity that happens whenever you start embarking on marriage communication mastery, like those benefits are endless, right? So there is no losing long term. There might be in this moment a feeling of, but there's no actual losing long term. So if you can get past those things that make you hesitant to make the commitment, here's how you will do it. So the first thing is you have to find a gym. And I talk about this all the time because I really believe that us being in a mental emotional gym, or in our case, in relationship opportunities where we're growing and learning more about marriage communication, I think that the more that we spend time in those scenarios, we just strengthen our ability to do these things in beautiful ways and create the relationships that we want. And so that's the first thing that you're going to have to do, is you really got to get connected with a place where you can grow your and strengthen your ability to communicate. So after you find that gym, you have to make a decision. And so you need to be able to cut yourself off from any other possibilities. You can't have the idea that you may or may not do relationship. You have to really make the commitment, okay? And then keep your vision in front of you. And so when our vision isn't in front of us, it's not even clear all the time what we're doing today for our relationship. So always keep it in front of you. Have it written down. Have reminders. Have accountability partners. Do those things that mean that it's facing you, so you know what your focus is. Build your behaviors out of the vision you set. And so the more that you can say, okay, this is my vision, so these are the things that I need to be doing, then you can get closer to your vision because you broke the behaviors down out of the vision that you had set. Okay, and then work on the being that allows you to automate those behaviors. And so many times we want to go to the those behaviors, but we can't do the behaviors because we haven't become the person that we need to become. So if you notice, like, man, I know the science, but I can't actually do those things. I know the key, but I can't actually do those things, right? Well, what stops you from doing them is you haven't become that person. And us staying in the gym really helps with that. Okay. And then finally, find an accountability partner, possibly your spouse, but it depends on your situation, um, that will really help you to maintain the commitment that you're making to getting to a better spot in your relationship. Okay. All right, you guys, because you spent a little bit of time with me, I want to share my gift with you, which is our marriage communication masterclass. And at least for this next month, um, I'm offering that to you guys, and I think it's a really cool opportunity to for you, um, to really grow your communication pieces. Why? Well, here's some things that I know because of the discussion that we just had. I know what's missing, right? And so what's missing is a couple of questions. One is, what does it actually take to become a master of communication? We laid out the keys and we laid out the science, but how do I actually get to moving on those scenarios? So we don't have the answer to that yet, and we do review that in our marriage communication masterclass. And then finally, like, how do I specifically use what we learned here to make my marriage feel connected, joyful, and secure? How do I do that? Right. And so those questions actually come up for us, um, even after we know some of the pieces that mean, like, okay, here's how communication works, and here's the key to doing communication differently, right? So we were able to label all of that today, but now there's some missing pieces, and you have the ability to join us in our next marriage communication masterclass, so that you can get the rest of that information um, and start boosting your marriage up. And so part of the piece that helps us to do our commitment is joining a gym, and I don't think there's a better place than our marriage communication masterclass. All right, you guys, I totally hope this serves you in your relationship. I know that it's a good start. You know, even if you're not able to join today in our marriage communication masterclass, you've got an amazing start because um, those pieces right there are game changers. You guys enjoy your evening, and we'll talk to you soon.